You are watching the Armwood Opinion channel on YouTube, and today we're talking about two pieces of legislation that have been moving through the House of Representatives and will be taken up by the Senate. And as a Georgian, I'm calling on our Senators John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock to co-sponsor these pieces of legislation as they come to the Senate. In the House, they're known as H.R. 1, the For the People Act of 2021, which will be S1 in the Senate. It was introduced on January 4th of this year. It had passed the House back in 2019 by a vote of 234 to 193. This has also been called the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And basically what it would do would be to reform our voting system and stop acts of voter suppression. It would reinstate Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which was gutted by Republicans on the Supreme Court, Justice Scalia, and those other radical right-wing justices in the case of Shelby versus Holder in 2013. And they gutted the intent of Section 5 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which was the pre-clearance provisions that states who wanted to change their voting rules in states that had a history of discrimination would have to have them pre-cleared by the Justice Department to make sure that they weren't trying to discriminate in the present. Scalia and his right-wing cabal on the court struck down those pre-clearance provisions and made the Voting Rights Act basically impotent. So we need to reinstate those by legislation. H.R. 51 was passed by the House of Representatives back in June of 2020. And what it is the Washington, D.C. Admission Act. And what the bill would do would be to allow Washington, D.C. to enter the nation as the 51st state. People living in the city of Washington, a city which has more people than 7 other states, do not have representation. This is what the American Revolution was supposedly fought about. Taxation without representation. Well, to this day, that is going on in Washington, D.C., as well as Puerto Rico, Guam, St. Thomas, St. Croix, St. John, the Virgin Islands, American Samoa. All of the U.S. territories are subject to taxation without representation. So this bill would give Washington, D.C. representation as a state, the 51st state. The bill defines the state as the state of Washington, Douglas, Commonwealth. The state of Washington, Douglas, Commonwealth. It sets up a procedure for admission for the state to develop its constitution, and the people of Washington, D.C. then would be able to have representation like everybody else. It's outrageous that states like Delaware and Rhode Island have representation, but the people of Washington, D.C. do not. North Dakota has representation. A smaller population is there. Alaska, a smaller population as lives there. But Washington, D.C. does not. This must end. So I'm asking my senators, John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, to support these two pieces of legislation. H1, which will be S1 when it comes to the Senate, and I want them to co-sponsor it. I know they'll support it in terms of voting. I know that, but I want them to sponsor it. And S51, the Washington Statehood bill. We need to stand up and show the country that we're not going to allow Republicans to continue to suppress our votes. We saw how President Trump tried to turn over the results of the state of Georgia, expressly in a phone call. Listen to what he said.
President Trump on tape pushing Georgia election officials to overturn his defeat.
I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
NBC News obtained a recording of Saturday's entire 62-minute call. The president and his advisors on the line complaining about Georgia's certified vote tally.
I think you have to say that you're going to re-examine it.
President Trump urging Georgia's Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger to announce he's reversing the results.
The people of Georgia are angry. The people of the country are angry. And there's nothing wrong with saying that, that you've recalculated.
Raffensperger responds,
"Well, Mr. President, the challenge that you have is the data you have is wrong."
The president at one point pressuring Raffensperger to stick with his party.
You should want to have an accurate election, and you're a Republican.
We believe that we do have an accurate election.
No, you don't.
Mr. Trump also cites a debunked conspiracy theory that Georgia election officials and a voting machine company tampered with ballots.
They are shredding ballots, in my opinion, based on what I've heard. And they are removing machinery, and they're moving it as fast as they can.
The Secretary of State's general counsel flatly dismissing that.
What we're saying is not at all what you're describing.
The president pushing back when Raffensperger suggests some of the information on social media cannot be trusted.
The problem you have with social media, people can say anything.
No, this isn't social media. This is Trump media.
Still, President Trump threatens the officials that they could face legal consequences.
You know what they did, and you're not reporting it. That's a criminal offense.
Lindsey Graham, senator from South Carolina, another thug, tried to influence the Attorney General of the state of Georgia. The Republican Attorney General of the state of Georgia thankfully said no to both of them. And we thank them for being loyal to our state, where both President Trump and Senator Lindsey Graham were disloyal to the United States of America in trying to overthrow our elections. They're part of a long tradition that goes back to before the Confederacy. These are bad people. We saw the attack on the Capitol. We know what these people are capable. They're not going to stop. We must resist them. So I'm going to close this video. I know our senators will stand with us, but we must let them know. We want them to co-sponsor this legislation. We want Georgia representatives taking the lead on this, because the people of Georgia were attacked by Donald Trump and Lindsey Graham and the Republican Party as a whole. Remember, as I always say, resistance is not futile.